A passenger plane lost both wings at 17,000 feet. Everyone should have died instantly. The pilots were fighting the controls wrong. They had 3 minutes before crashing. Then a quiet college student stood up from her seat. She was studying aerospace engineering. She understood the physics. She knocked on the cockpit door. She knew exactly what to do. She saved 295 lives that day. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Flight 447 left New York at 10:15 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. It was going to Denver. The Boeing 777 was full of passengers. There were 295 people on board. Captain Robert Harrison was the pilot. He was 60 years old. He had been flying for 32 years. This was his last flight before retirement. Sarah Chen sat in seat 12B. She was 23 years old. She was studying aerospace engineering at Columbia University. She wanted to design safer airplanes. Her father had been a pilot. He died in a plane crash when Sarah was 12 years old. His engine failed and the plane crashed. Everyone died. Sarah remembered that terrible day clearly. She was in math class at school. The principal came to get her. Sarah knew immediately something was wrong. The principal's face was sad. She told Sarah about the crash. Sarah did not cry at first. She was too shocked. Her father was the best pilot she knew. How could this happen? The funeral was the hardest day of her young life. So many pilots came to honor her father. They told stories about him. They said he was careful and skilled. They said he always put safety first. But still, his plane had failed. Still, he had died. Sarah stood next to her mother, holding her hand, wondering why good pilots had to die. After her father died, Sarah became obsessed with airplanes. She wanted to understand why planes crash. She wanted to prevent accidents. Every night, she read books about aviation. She studied accident reports. She learned about aerodynamics. Her mother was worried at first. But then she understood. Sarah needed to do this. She needed to understand flying to heal from losing her father. She started taking flying lessons when she was 16. Her mother was scared. Flying had killed her husband. But Sarah begged her. "I need to do this, Mom," Sarah said. "I need to understand what Dad loved. I need to face my fear." Her mother finally agreed. Sarah's flight instructor was named Tom Martinez. He was an old pilot with 40 years of experience. He said Sarah was different from other students. She asked questions that most students never thought about. She wanted to know not just how to fly, but why everything worked the way it did. She wanted to understand the physics behind every movement of the plane. She got her private pilot license at 17. She passed with the highest score in her state that year. Her mother gave her a gift that day. It was her father's old pilot watch. The watch still worked perfectly. Sarah put it on her wrist. She wore it every day after that. It reminded her of her father. It reminded her of why she was learning to fly. She got her commercial pilot license at 21. Now she could fly planes professionally and get paid. But she did not want to be an airline pilot. She wanted to design planes instead. She wanted to make them safer. She wanted to prevent crashes through better engineering. She had flown 1,200 hours in small planes. She had faced real emergencies in the air. She had landed with engine problems. She had flown through terrible storms. She knew how to stay calm when things went wrong. Sarah brought her textbook on the flight. She was reading about wing design. She was learning about how wings attach to the plane body. She did not know this knowledge would soon save her life. On the morning of the flight, Sarah woke up early. She checked her small suitcase one more time. She had packed carefully. Her laptop, her textbooks, some clothes, and her father's old flight logbook. She always carried his logbook with her. It had his handwriting in it. His notes about different flights. His thoughts about weather and wind. Reading his words made her feel close to him. She took the subway to LaGuardia Airport. The morning was cold and gray. She arrived 2 hours early, like always. She went through security. She bought a coffee at a small cafe. She sat near the gate and opened her textbook. She was reading about structural stress on wing roots. She was reading about metal fatigue and how tiny cracks can grow over time. She had no idea how important this knowledge would become in just a few hours. When boarding was called, she was one of the first to enter the plane. She found seat 12B and settled in. She put her small bag in the overhead bin. She sat down and buckled her seatbelt. She put on her noise-canceling headphones. She wanted to study without distractions. The plane took off smoothly. The weather was perfect. Clear blue sky. No clouds. No wind. Everything seemed normal. Sarah was reading her book. Other passengers were relaxing. Some were sleeping. Some were working on laptops. Children were watching movies. Flight attendants were serving drinks and snacks. Sarah was completely absorbed in her textbook. She was reading a chapter about catastrophic wing failure. The textbook explained what happens when wings detach from the fuselage. It said that such failures are extremely rare but almost always fatal. The plane would lose all lift immediately. It would fall from the sky like a rock. There was no known case of anyone surviving a complete wing separation on a large commercial aircraft. Sarah read these words and thought about her father. She wondered if he had known what was happening in those final moments. If he had understood that his plane was doomed. If he had been scared or if his training had kept him calm. She hoped he had not suffered. Then at 10:43 a.m., everything changed. A massive explosion shook the plane. The plane twisted violently. Alarms screamed. Red lights flashed everywhere. People started screaming. Luggage fell from overhead bins. Sarah looked out the window. She gasped. The left wing was gone. Completely gone. Just empty air where the wing should be. Then she looked at the right wing. It was shaking badly. As she watched, the right wing broke apart and fell away. Both wings were gone. The plane had no wings. Sarah's heart was racing. She knew the basic rule of flying. A plane needs wings to fly. Wings create lift. Without lift, a plane cannot stay in the air. Without wings, this plane should fall like a rock. Everyone should be dead already. But they were not dead. The plane was still moving through the air. It was falling, but not straight down. It was gliding at an angle. Sarah looked out the window again. She could see the torn metal where the wings had been attached. She could see fuel leaking into the air, creating a misty trail behind them. She could see the damaged fuselage where the wing roots had torn away. Her mind was working fast. She was thinking about everything she had learned. About aerodynamics. About lift and drag. About air pressure and surfaces. About angles and velocity. Her textbook had said wing separation was always fatal. But her textbook was wrong. They were still alive. Still flying. There had to be a reason. Then she understood. The fuselage itself was creating lift. The body of the plane was acting like a poorly designed wing. It was not efficient. It was not stable. But it was producing enough lift to keep them from falling straight down. They were gliding like a flying brick. Badly, but gliding nonetheless. Sarah's engineering mind started working through the problem. She calculated angles in her head. She thought about air pressure under the fuselage. She thought about the center of gravity. She thought about how the tail could be used to control pitch. She thought about how differential engine thrust could control roll. She saw the solution clearly in her mind. But there was a major problem. The pilots would not know this. They would be trained to think of the plane as a normal aircraft. They would use normal controls. But this was not a normal aircraft anymore. This was a flying tube with no wings. It needed to be controlled completely differently. If the pilots kept using normal techniques, they would crash within minutes. Sarah looked around the cabin. People were screaming. A woman was holding her baby and crying. An old man was praying out loud. A businessman was on his phone trying to call his family. Children were sobbing. Flight attendants were trying to stay calm, but their faces showed pure terror. Everyone thought they were about to die. Sarah made a split-second decision. She could sit here and do nothing. She could wait and hope the pilots figured it out. But they would not figure it out in time. She knew that. Her knowledge told her they had maybe 4 minutes before the descent rate became too steep to recover from. 4 minutes before they crashed into the ground below. Or she could act. She could try to help. She had the knowledge. She had flown planes. She understood the physics. But she was just a passenger. Just a young woman. Just a student. Would they listen to her? Would they trust her? She thought about her father. He had died trying to save his plane. He had fought until the very end. He had never given up. Sarah would not give up either. Even if the pilots ignored her. Even if she failed. She had to try. She owed it to her father. She owed it to everyone on this plane. Sarah stood up. Her legs were shaking badly. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands were trembling. But she stood up. She had made her decision. A flight attendant grabbed her arm. "Sit down. We have an emergency." "I need to talk to the pilots," Sarah said. "I know what to do. I am a pilot. I can help." "You cannot go to the cockpit," the attendant said. But Sarah was already moving forward. She held on to seats as she walked. The plane was shaking badly. People were crying and praying. Sarah reached the cockpit door and knocked hard. Inside, Captain Harrison was fighting to control the plane. First Officer Marcus Williams was watching the instruments in horror. All the warning lights were flashing. They had never seen anything like this. Marcus's hands were shaking as he looked at the screens. Every system was showing failures. The hydraulics were failing. The control systems were malfunctioning. It was like the entire plane was falling apart. He had been flying for 12 years and had never seen so many red lights at once. "What is happening?" Marcus shouted over the alarm sounds. "Everything is failing at once. This is impossible." Captain Harrison was gripping the control wheel so hard his knuckles were white. He pulled back with all his strength. But the plane was not responding correctly. The nose pointed up, but they were falling. That made no sense. When you pull up, the plane should climb. But they were descending rapidly. "I do not understand," Captain Harrison said, his voice tight with fear. "The controls are not working. Nothing makes sense. We should be climbing, but we are falling." "Someone is knocking," Marcus said suddenly. "Answer it," Captain Harrison said. "Answer it," Captain Harrison said. Marcus opened the door. He saw a young woman. She looked calm and focused. "You cannot be here," Marcus said. "Go back to your seat." "I am a pilot with 1,200 hours of experience," Sarah said clearly. "Both wings are gone. I saw them fall. The plane can still fly, but you are fighting it wrong. You are making it worse." Let me help or everyone will die. Captain Harrison looked at her. He was desperate. Nothing in his training covered this. Let her in, he said. Sarah entered the cockpit. She looked at all the instruments. She understood what was happening. The plane was descending at 3,000 feet per minute. Too fast. They would crash in less than 4 minutes. How long have you been pulling up on the control wheel? Sarah asked. 3 minutes, Captain Harrison said. I am trying to keep the nose up. Stop, Sarah said firmly. You are fighting physics. When you pull up without wings, you create drag. More drag means faster descent. You are killing us by trying to save us. Captain Harrison stared at her. Everything in his training said to pull up. But this girl was saying the opposite. Use the tail controls, Sarah said. Small movements. The fuselage is producing lift now. We need the perfect angle. Too steep creates drag. Too flat and we fall too fast. Captain Harrison moved the tail control gently. The plane responded. It became slightly more stable. Good, Sarah said. Now adjust the engines. Right engine at 75%. Left engine at 65%. This will tilt us to the perfect gliding angle. Captain Harrison did exactly what she said. The plane became much more stable. The descent rate dropped from 3,000 feet per minute to 2,000 feet per minute. It is working. Marcus said in disbelief. Call Denver Airport, Sarah said. Tell them we need emergency landing. Tell them we have no wings. Tell them we are coming in fast. Captain Harrison grabbed the radio. Denver Control, this is Flight 447. Emergency. Both wings have separated from aircraft. We are gliding on fuselage only. Need immediate landing clearance. Long silence. Then the controller responded. Flight 447, confirm you said both wings are gone. Confirmed. Both wings gone. 295 souls on board. We need to land now. Flight 447, all traffic cleared. Runway 35 left is yours. Emergency equipment standing by. What is your estimated time? Sarah calculated quickly. 5 to 6 minutes, she said. We copy. 5 to 6 minutes. Good luck, Flight 447. The plane glided smoothly toward Denver Airport. Sarah talked Captain Harrison through every step. She watched every instrument. She calculated every angle. Altitude 13,000 feet, Marcus called out. 4 minutes away, Sarah said. You can see the airport now. Through the window, they saw the runway. Emergency vehicles were everywhere. Fire trucks. Ambulances. Foam trucks spraying white foam on the runway. Keep everything steady, Sarah said. Do not make sudden moves. The balance is perfect now. Any change will break it. Altitude 9,000 feet. 3 minutes. Captain, this landing will be very hard. We cannot slow down without wings. We will hit at maybe 250 miles per hour. But the landing gear can handle it. What do we do? Captain Harrison asked. Do not flare. Do not pull up at the last second for a soft landing. That will break our gliding angle. We will drop like a rock. Instead, fly straight into the runway. Let the gear absorb the impact. Hard and fast, but we will survive. Captain Harrison made an announcement to passengers. This will be an extremely hard landing. Remove shoes and glasses. Get in brace position now. Hold your ankles. Stay down until we stop completely. Altitude 5,000 feet. 90 seconds. Landing gear down. The wheels came down. The plane slowed slightly but not much. Altitude 3,000 feet. 1 minute. Captain Harrison, you have done everything perfectly. Because you listened to me, everyone will survive. Your grandson will meet his grandfather. Captain Harrison had tears in his eyes but kept his hands steady. Altitude 1,000 feet. 20 seconds. Hold steady. Altitude 500 feet. 10 seconds. Brace. The landing gear touched the runway. The impact was enormous. The hardest landing anyone had ever experienced. The plane hit so hard that everything shook. Sparks flew. Tires screamed. Brakes applied at maximum force. White foam sprayed everywhere. The plane was sliding at incredible speed. 300 miles per hour. Then 250. Then 200. The runway was running out. Sarah could see the end approaching fast. 150, then 100. The brakes were burning. She could smell the smoke. Then 50. The plane stopped. They were at the very end of the runway. Just 200 feet from the grass. If they had been going any faster, they would have run off the runway and crashed. But they had stopped. They were alive. Complete silence filled the cockpit. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They could not believe what had just happened. They had landed a plane without wings. Something that should be impossible. Something that had never been done before in aviation history. Then Captain Harrison and Marcus started laughing and crying at the same time. They were shaking uncontrollably. Their hands were trembling. The adrenaline was leaving their bodies. They had just survived the impossible. Captain Harrison turned to look at Sarah. Tears were streaming down his face. "We are alive," he whispered. "We are actually alive. You saved us all." Sarah was just breathing. Her heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst. Her hands were shaking. But everyone was alive. All 295 people were alive. She had done it. She had saved them. She had done what her father could not do all those years ago. Emergency workers rushed to the plane. Passengers evacuated down the slides. Paramedics checked everyone. Amazingly, nobody was seriously hurt. Some bruises. Some sore necks. But everyone was okay. Cameras were everywhere. News crews were filming. Captain Harrison stood with Sarah in front of the cameras. "This young woman saved 295 lives today," he said loudly. "Her name is Sarah Chen. Without her knowledge and courage, we would all be dead. She is a hero." The story spread around the world within hours. Every news channel showed the footage. Every newspaper had the story on the front page. Every website was talking about it. Social media exploded with posts about the miracle landing. People could not believe what they were seeing. A plane without wings had landed safely. Plane loses both wings and lands safely. Student saves 295 people in impossible landing. Miracle in the sky. Girl hero saves hundreds with physics knowledge. Videos of the landing went viral. Millions of people watched the footage. They saw the plane with no wings gliding through the air. They saw the hard landing on the foam-covered runway. They saw the plane slide to a stop. It was the most incredible thing anyone had ever seen. Sarah's phone rang constantly. It was her mother, crying with joy and relief. "Your father would be so proud of you," her mother said through her tears. "You did what he could not do. You saved everyone. Oh Sarah, I am so proud of you. So proud." Sarah started crying too. "I did it for Dad, Mom. I did it for him. I saved them like he tried to save his passengers. I finally understand why he loved flying so much. He wanted to protect people. He wanted to bring them home safely. Reporters surrounded Sarah's apartment building. They wanted interviews. They wanted photos. They wanted her story. Sarah did not want to be famous. She was uncomfortable with all the attention. But she agreed to one interview. She wanted people to understand what really happened. She wanted people to learn from this. "How did you know what to do?" the reporter asked. "I studied physics and engineering," Sarah explained. "I understood that a fuselage can create lift at the correct angle. I knew the theory. I just had to apply it in a real emergency." "Were you scared?" "Yes. I was terrified. But I had to try. My father died in a plane crash trying to save his passengers. I wanted to do what he could not do." Captain Harrison also did interviews. "Sarah saved us all. I have 32 years of experience, but I had never faced this. She understood the physics better than me. She had the courage to speak up. She is the bravest person I have ever met." The National Transportation Safety Board investigated the crash. They found tiny cracks in the wing roots where the wings attached to the fuselage. The cracks had grown over many years. Nobody had noticed them during inspections. Finally, the cracks failed. Both wings broke off. The investigators ran computer simulations. Their conclusion was shocking. Without Sarah's help, the plane would have crashed in 3 minutes. Captain Harrison's instinct to pull up was actually making the descent faster. The increased drag from pulling the nose up was causing them to lose altitude even faster. Sarah's instructions reduced the descent rate by 40%. That 40% made all the difference. It saved everyone. The investigators wrote in their final report, "Sarah Chen's understanding of aerodynamic principles saved 295 lives. Without her intervention, this would have been one of the deadliest aviation accidents in history." Her actions demonstrate the importance of understanding basic physics and aerodynamics, and the critical value of staying calm under extreme pressure. Miss Chen's ability to recognize that the fuselage could be used as a lifting body, and her knowledge of how to optimize that configuration, represents one of the most remarkable examples of aviation problem-solving in history. The report also made recommendations. Airlines should teach pilots about unconventional flight scenarios. They should include training on how to think creatively during emergencies. They should emphasize understanding the fundamental physics of flight, not just following procedures. The report specifically recommended that the Chen method be taught to all commercial pilots as part of their emergency training. Boeing read the report carefully. They were shocked and horrified that their aircraft had suffered such a catastrophic failure. They immediately began investigating all Boeing 777s in service. They developed new inspection procedures to detect tiny cracks in wing attachment points. They changed their maintenance schedules. They redesigned the wing root structure to make it stronger. They added redundant safety systems. They made sure this could never happen again. Sarah received many awards. The president gave her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Aviation organizations honored her. Columbia University gave her a full scholarship. Aerospace companies offered her jobs. But Sarah remained humble. "I just did what needed to be done," she said. "Anyone with my knowledge would have done the same." The passengers organized a reunion 3 months later. Everyone came. When Sarah walked in, everyone stood and applauded. The applause went on for 5 minutes. People were crying and clapping at the same time. Sarah was embarrassed but also deeply moved. One by one, they came to thank her personally. Each person had their own story to tell. A businessman said, "I have 3 children. They are 8, 10, and 12 years old. Because of you, they still have a father. I get to watch them grow up. I get to see them graduate and get married someday. Thank you for giving me my life back." An elderly woman said, "I met my great-grandchildren because of you. I held my great-granddaughter for the first time last week. She is beautiful. I never thought I would live to see her. But you saved me. You saved all of us. A young mother with a baby said, "My daughter will grow up with her mother because of you. She will know her mother's voice. She will know her mother's love. That is because of you. I can never thank you enough." A teenage boy said, "I was so scared on that plane. I thought I was going to die. I had not even graduated high school yet. But you saved me. Now I am going to college next year. I am going to study engineering like you. I want to help people like you helped us." Sarah hugged each person. These were not just numbers. These were real people with real families. She had saved them all. Captain Harrison stood to speak. "Sarah taught me something important. We should never stop learning. We should never think we know everything. Age and experience do not always matter. Knowledge and courage matter more." He walked to Sarah. "I met my grandson. His name is James. I named him after your father. I hope that is okay." Sarah could not speak. She just hugged him and cried. After graduation, Sarah started working for Boeing. She designed a new safety system called the Emergency Glide System. This system helps pilots control a plane if the wings are damaged. It automatically adjusts the tail and engines to maintain the perfect gliding angle. It is based on everything she learned from Flight 447. Boeing installed the system in all their new planes. Other manufacturers studied her design. Sarah's system has since saved lives in several emergencies. Planes with severe wing damage were able to land safely because of her invention. Sarah also taught classes about emergency flying. She taught pilots around the country to think beyond their training. "Your training is important," she told her students. "But it cannot cover every situation. You need to understand the basic physics. Then you can figure out what to do even in impossible situations." Many of her students became excellent pilots. Several faced emergencies and survived because of what Sarah taught them. The Federal Aviation Administration created new training programs based on Flight 447. They taught pilots about flying without wings. They taught them Sarah's techniques. They called it the Chen Method. 5 years later, Sarah spoke at an aviation safety conference. Pilots and engineers from around the world attended. "My father died in a plane crash when I was 12, she began. He was a good pilot. He did everything right. But his plane failed him. I was angry for years. Then I realized I could change things. I could learn everything about planes. I could make them safer. When Flight 447 happened, I had the knowledge needed to save everyone. I understood the physics. And I was not afraid to act. I knocked on that cockpit door and said, 'I know what to do.' The lesson is this: never stop learning. Always be ready to think differently. Always understand the science behind what you do. Because that knowledge might save lives someday." The audience gave her a standing ovation. Many were crying. 10 years after Flight 447, a documentary was made about the incident. Film crews interviewed everyone involved. They used computer graphics to recreate the flight. They explained the physics and engineering in detail. They told Sarah's story and her father's story. They explained how one tragedy inspired a daughter to prevent other tragedies. The documentary was called Wings of Courage: The Flight 447 Story. It won multiple awards at film festivals. It was shown in schools across America and around the world. Teachers used it to teach students about physics, courage, and never giving up. It inspired thousands of young people to study aviation and engineering. Sarah watched the documentary with her mother at a special screening. They held hands and cried together as they watched. It was emotional to relive that day. To see the recreation of the plane losing its wings. To hear the panic in the voices. To watch the landing again. But it was also beautiful to see how much good had come from that terrible day. "Your father would be so proud," her mother said, squeezing Sarah's hand. "He died trying to save his plane. But you succeeded. You saved 295 people. You changed aviation safety forever. You honored his memory in the most beautiful way possible." Sarah nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. She looked at the two watches on her wrists. Her father's watch on the left. Captain Harrison's grandfather's watch on the right. Both ticking steadily. Both reminding her of her purpose in life. The Boeing 777 from Flight 447 is now in the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. It sits there without wings, a testament to the impossible. A large sign next to it tells the complete story. Thousands of people visit it every year to see the plane that should have crashed but did not. School groups come to see it. Children stand beneath the massive fuselage and look up in wonder. Teachers explain the physics of what happened. They tell the story of Sarah Chen, the quiet girl who saved everyone. Many of those children go home and tell their parents they want to be engineers or pilots when they grow up. Today, Sarah Chen is one of the leading safety engineers in aviation. She works for NASA designing safety systems for spacecraft and aircraft. She teaches at MIT. She writes books about aviation safety. She still flies small planes every weekend, keeping her connection to the sky that her father loved so much. Captain Robert Harrison is retired. He lives near Denver with his wife. He sees his grandson James every week. James is now 10 years old and wants to be a pilot and engineer, just like Sarah. Captain Harrison tells James stories about the day Sarah saved his life. He tells him that heroes come in all forms, and sometimes the quietest person in the room is the bravest. Marcus Williams is now a captain himself, flying Boeing 777s on international routes. He tells every new first officer about Flight 447. He tells them to always listen and never assume they know everything. "A 23-year-old girl saved my life," he always says. "Because I listened to her." Always listen. Always be open to learning. The 295 passengers went on with their lives. But they never forgot. They keep in touch online through a private group. Every year on the anniversary of Flight 447, they post messages of gratitude. They share photos of their families. They talk about the moments they have experienced because Sarah gave them more time. Weddings. Births. Graduations. Grandchildren. All the beautiful moments of life that almost did not happen. Several of the passengers' children became engineers or pilots because of Sarah's example. They wanted to be like her. They wanted to understand how things work. They wanted to save lives and help people. Sarah had inspired an entire generation. Sarah visits the museum sometimes. She stands in front of the plane without wings. She remembers that day. The fear. The desperate fight. The moment they touched down safely. She touches the fuselage gently, running her hand along the metal. This plane carried her and 294 other people through an impossible situation. This plane was supposed to crash. But it did not. Visitors sometimes recognize her when she is at the museum. They ask for photos. They ask her to tell the story. She always does. She believes people should learn from what happened. She believes education can save lives. A young girl approached her once. The girl was maybe 10 years old. She was with her father. "Are you Sarah Chen?" the girl asked shyly. "Yes, I am," Sarah said, smiling. "You are my hero," the girl said. "I want to be an engineer like you. I want to save people too." Sarah knelt down to the girl's level. "Then study hard. Learn math and science. Be curious about how things work. And remember, being a hero is not about being fearless. It is about being scared but doing the right thing anyway." Can you do that? The girl nodded seriously. I can do that. Sarah watched the girl and her father walk away. She thought about all the young people she had inspired. All the future engineers and pilots who would make the world safer. That was the real legacy of Flight 447. Not just the 295 lives saved that day, but all the future lives that would be saved by the people inspired by that day. And she thinks about her father. I did it, Dad, she whispers. I saved them. I did what you tried to do. I changed aviation. I made planes safer. I am still saving lives. Because of you. Because you inspired me. I love you, Dad. And I will never stop working to make flying safer. Sarah wears 2 watches. One from her father who died trying to save his plane. One from Captain Harrison who survived because he listened. Both watches remind her why she does what she does. Both remind her that every life matters. The story of Flight 447 is taught in every flight school in the world. It is studied in engineering classes. It is discussed in pilot training programs. Because it proves something important. Impossible situations can be overcome with knowledge and courage. Age and experience do not always matter as much as understanding. We should never stop learning. Most importantly, it proves that one person with knowledge and courage can save hundreds of lives. One person who refuses to give up can change everything. One person who thinks differently can overcome impossible odds. Sarah Chen was that person. A quiet girl in seat 12B. A student with a textbook. A daughter honoring her father's memory. A pilot who understood physics. A hero who saved 295 lives. She did it because she refused to give up. Because she trusted science. Because she thought differently. Because she had the courage to knock on that cockpit door and say, I know what to do. That is the story of Flight 447. The plane that lost both wings at 17,000 feet. The impossible landing. The girl who saved everyone. The story that proves anything is possible if you have knowledge, courage, and the willingness to think differently.